All right. It looks like we're going deep on the Wim Hof method this time.
Yeah, you've said a really interesting collection of stuff. Articles, studies.
Even a YouTube interview. You're really trying to get to the bottom of this.
Absolutely. It's quite the mix. We've got hard science, we've got personal stories.
And we've even got a glimpse into the daily life of Wim Hof himself, the Iceman.
Exactly.
Now, just to get everyone up to speed, Wim Hof, he's called the Iceman because of his, well...
He's pretty crazy.
Yeah, insane ability to withstand, like, extreme cold. And he claims...
He claims it's all thanks to his method, right?
Right. This method he's developed, he says it can unlock, like, serious inner potential, for things like health and resilience.
Yeah, that's the big claim, isn't it?
Well, we're here to dig deeper, right? To see what the evidence says.
Absolutely. We're going to break it all down, figure out what this method actually is, look at all the benefits Wim Hof is claiming.
And most importantly, see if the science actually backs it up.
Right. Let's start with the basics. The framework of the Wim Hof method.
Okay, so from what I gathered from the interview and stuff, the 3 pillars are specialized breathing techniques, then there's cold exposure.
And of course, what Wim Hof calls commitment, which is all about...
Yeah, the power of the mind.
The mental aspect, yeah.
Now, I've dabbled in breathing exercises before, but this connection to the cold, I'm really fascinated by that.
Yeah, how does that all fit in?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Well, it's really important to note that Wim Hof is adamant about safety, especially with the cold exposure.
So it's not about just jumping into an ice bath right away.
Absolutely not. He really stresses a gradual process, listening to your body.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting is how he links that cold exposure to the mental side of things.
Oh, to that commitment pillar.
Exactly. It's not just about physical toughness.
So there's more to it than just like gritting your teeth and bearing it.
Right. He seems to be saying that the cold is almost like a tool.
Okay.
A way to train your mind, break through those mental barriers.
To build up that resilience he talks about.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these pillars connect now. But let's break down the breathing technique a little.
Okay, yeah.
In the interview, Wim Hof, he describes, this very specific pattern of breathing, like in and out,
right,
holding your breath. He even says that this can actually change our physiology, affect our state of mind.
Interesting.
So what's the science behind that?
Well, there actually is some really interesting research emerging that sheds light on this. Studies have shown that the Wim Hof breathing can change your blood chemistry.
Really?
Yeah. For example, it can increase blood pH levels, make the body more alkaline.
So it's not just about getting a bunch of oxygen in there.
No, it's more complex than that. It seems to trigger this whole cascade of responses in the body.
Okay.
Some researchers think it might activate the sympathetic nervous system, which leads to a release of adrenaline. Wim Hof even suggests that it can tap into deeper parts of the brain, release endorphins, those feel-good chemicals.
So you could potentially feel more energized, focused after just a few minutes of breathing. That's a pretty wild claim.
It is.
But let's be real, the part that everyone is most curious about is the cold exposure. I mean, the ice bath footage in that interview.
Intense.
It's
amazing how he describes it, The initial panic, the discomfort.
Yeah, and then eventually this feeling of warmth washing over him.
It's almost like a mental shift, right?
Yeah.
Like your mind is adapting to this extreme sensation.
And he makes it very clear, right, that the ice bath isn't about punishment or anything. It's about pushing past those, like, mental limits.
Right, and developing a different kind of resilience.
Yeah. But are there any proven benefits beyond just being able to tolerate the cold?
Well, some research does suggest that cold exposure can boost the immune system.
Really?
But more research is definitely needed to confirm that.
Okay.
What's really interesting is how Wim Hof links cold exposure to willpower and mental toughness.
Yeah.
He tells that story about Patrice Evra.
Oh, the footballer, yeah. I remember that. Evra had a childhood trauma, something about cold water.
Right.
But through the Wim Hof method,
he was able to overcome it.
He became totally comfortable in those icy conditions.
It's a really compelling example of how powerful this can be.
Yeah, it really highlights the potential for change.
It does, but of course we need to look at the scientific evidence to get a clearer picture. Some of the research we've seen is groundbreaking, while other findings are still...
up for debate.
Exactly.
One study that I thought was particularly interesting was the one at Radboud University.
Oh, yeah.
Where they actually injected Wim Hof with, like, an E. coli endotoxin.
Wow.
Which would normally trigger, like, severe flu-like symptoms.
Right, make you really sick.
But he had almost no reaction. It was like he could control his immune response.
That study was huge. It really challenged a lot of assumptions about our immune system.
And how much control we actually have over it.
Exactly.
And then there was the study at Wayne State University.
Yes, where they
showed how he could consciously control his body's response to cold.
Incredible.
They found that he could keep his skin temperature stable even when exposed to freezing temperatures.
It seemed almost superhuman.
And they saw him activating specific brain regions.
The ones associated with pain and temperature regulation.
It's like, how is that even possible?
That's the million-dollar question. While these studies were rigorous and had fascinating implications, it's really important to acknowledge that more research is needed to really understand.
Or understand the mechanisms,
Yeah, what's happening on a physiological level.
So the initial findings are exciting, but we need to be cautious.
We need more data before drawing any big conclusions.
Exactly. A balanced view is key. Some scientists are still skeptical, and they're right to call for larger-scale studies to really confirm these results. But the research so far is definitely...
It's definitely intriguing.
Intriguing, and it raises a lot of really interesting questions. Yeah. It seems like the common thread running through all of this is the power of the mind.
Right.
Wim Hof constantly talks about mental strength,
Visualization,
and the role of belief in pushing past discomfort.
And achieving what seems impossible.
He talks about visualizing warmth, controlling your inner thermostat, believing in your ability to overcome any challenge.
It's almost like mental training for your body.
Yeah, and this brings us to a really interesting concept. Interoception.
Interoception, what's that?
Yeah, what is that?
It's the ability to sense and control your internal bodily states. And the Wim Hof method seems to be training this ability, allowing you to influence your physiological responses.
Through mental techniques.
Yeah, through focused awareness.
So if you're looking for ways to, manage stress...
or build up your resilience?
That mental training aspect of the Wim Hof method could be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, that's like he's saying, we have more control over our bodies and minds...
than we realize.
...than we think. But now let's get a bit personal. The interview gave us a peek into Wim Hof's daily routine and
it's not exactly your average morning routine.
Let's just say it's pretty intense.
Yeah, he wakes up early, does these intense workouts.
Often to the point of pain.
And he eats only one meal a day, usually late in the evening.
It's serious dedication.
There's some serious commitment there.
While his commitment is definitely admirable, it's important to remember that this isn't for everyone. It's essential to listen to your own body.
Right. Find what works for you.
Yeah, his routine is an example, not a prescription.
It's not a rule book.
Exactly. Blindly adopting extreme practices.
Could be harmful.
Right. So it's all about finding that sustainable approach that, aligns with your needs and goals.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to something really important. Addressing the skepticism and, figuring out what works.
Right. Because
the Wim Hof method has its fair share of criticism. And
understandably so. It's understandable. There's a mix of scientific evidence and anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
And some people are just wary of anything that challenges conventional thinking.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely wise to approach any new health or wellness practice with, a critical eye.
Especially one that makes such bold claims.
Right. Especially this one.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution here.
Okay.
The key is to be informed, proceed cautiously.
And see what resonates with you.
With your body in mind.
So, to recap, we've talked about the 3 pillars. Breathing techniques, cold exposure, and the power of the mind.
Right.
We've looked at the scientific evidence, which is promising but still needs further exploration.
Yeah.
And we've emphasized the importance of listening to your body.
And finding a personalized approach.
Exactly.
So far, it's been quite a deep dive.
Yeah.
But we're just getting started.
We're just scratching the surface here.
There's so much more to uncover in these sources. But for now, let's leave you with a question.
Okay, a thought-provoking question. All right. Wim Hof claims this method isn't about becoming superhuman, but about tapping into the potential that already exists within us.
What if he's right?
Yeah, what if we're capable of so much more than we think?
That's a really powerful question to ponder.
Right.
It's like he's challenging us to rethink what we think is possible. Like maybe we have more potential than we realize.
Yeah, he seems to be pushing back against the idea that we're fragile, that we need to avoid discomfort at all costs.
Right, like we need to constantly protect ourselves.
Exactly. He talks a lot about how our modern lifestyle, with all the comfort and convenience, has actually made us weaker.
It's a pretty interesting critique of modern society, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's basically saying we've become so used to avoiding discomfort that we've lost touch with our inner strength.
That resilience.
Exactly. And he sees that as a big reason why we have so many chronic health problems these days.
And why we struggle so much with stress.
Right. We're just not equipped to handle it anymore.
So his solution is to embrace the cold, push past those limits we've set for ourselves.
And use the power of the mind to overcome those challenges. Yeah.
Like, what? Get uncomfortable to become stronger.
He has this one quote that really stuck with me. If you don't go to the cold will come to you.
Ooh, I like that.
It's like, if we don't actively seek out challenges, life will just throw them at us anyway.
And we won't be ready.
Exactly.
So it's about taking control, being proactive.
Instead of just reacting to whatever life throws our way.
But does he have any personal experience that backs this up?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his own life story is a testament to this philosophy. He's gone through some incredibly difficult times.
Yeah, immense tragedy and hardship.
But he came out of it with this unshakable belief in human resilience.
Yeah, I was reading about the loss of his wife.
Oh.
It seemed like a real turning point for him. Like the cold became a way for him to cope with the grief.
And to reclaim his inner strength,
It's a good reminder that resilience isn't about being immune to suffering. Right.
It's about finding ways to move through it.
To learn from it.
And come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly.
It's pretty inspiring that he was able to, transform his pain into something positive.
And use it to fuel his journey.
Yeah. He even suggests that this inner strength, this ability to tap into those deeper reserves, isn't something we have to build from nothing. He thinks it's already there.
It's within us, waiting to be unlocked.
That's a very empowering idea.
It is. It's like we all have this potential for greatness, but
we're blocking it somehow.
Yeah, maybe with our own limiting beliefs.
And maybe the Wim Hof method is a way to break through those limitations.
With the breath work, the cold exposure, the mental training. Yeah.
But it's not an easy path, right?
Definitely not. It takes real commitment.
Discipline.
And a willingness to step outside your comfort zone.
For sure. So let's dive a little deeper into the specifics of the method. We talked about the breathing technique before, but I'd love to learn more.
What's he actually doing with the breath, and how does that tie into the rest of his method?
Well, he describes it as a way to biohack the body.
Biohack?
Yeah, to consciously influence our physiology and access these deeper states of awareness.
Okay, biohacking. That sounds a little intimidating.
It's basically just using different techniques to optimize your body and mind.
Okay, so how does breathing fit into that?
In the interview, he actually demonstrates the technique. It involves a specific pattern of deep inhalations and exhalations, followed by holding your breath. The key, he says, is to really take control of the breath.
So it's more than just breathing deeply.
Yeah, it's about conscious control.
Why is that so important?
He claims that this type of controlled breathing can shift our blood chemistry, increase oxygen levels, activate the sympathetic nervous system, and that can lead to a release of adrenaline, a heightened state of alertness.
Wow, that's a lot happening just from breathing differently.
It is, isn't it? He even suggests it can help release stored trauma.
Really?
And emotional blockages. But
that seems like a pretty big claim.
Yeah. It's important to be cautious about interpreting anecdotal evidence,
Right.
While many people who practice the Wim Hof method report profound experiences.
Like emotional release.
And a greater sense of well-being, more research is definitely needed.
To understand what's really going on.
Exactly. It's always good to be a little skeptical.
Especially with extraordinary claims.
But even if some of the benefits are due to the placebo effect, the power of belief and expectation.
That's interesting in itself.
Right. It shows how interconnected our minds and bodies really are.
Yeah, that's a great point. Our beliefs can really shape our experience.
Absolutely.
But let's move on to another key element of the Wim Hof method.
Okay.
The cold exposure. The infamous ice baths.
Ah, yes, the ice baths.
Yeah.
The interview actually shows Wim Hof guiding someone through their first ice bath.
I remember that.
And you can really see those emotions,
Yeah.
The initial shock, the discomfort.
And then surprisingly,
a sense of exhilaration.
It's wild.
Yeah, he really frames the cold exposure as a mental challenge as much as a physical one.
Pushing past those limits.
And proving to yourself that you can handle more than you think you can.
He talks about a number of benefits from regular cold exposure.
Increased cold tolerance, of course. A boosted immune system. Improved circulation.
He even says it enhances mental clarity and focus.
Right, but is there any science to back this up?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Well, some studies do support some of these claims.
Okay.
Particularly the effects on cold tolerance and circulation.
Oh.
But like with the breathing technique, we need more research to really understand the long-term effects.
And the full range of benefits.
Exactly.
Seems like there's a lot we still don't know, and I'm assuming there are some risks involved, too.
Oh, absolutely. Cold exposure is not a joke. It's really important to approach it cautiously.
Okay.
Gradually increase exposure time. And it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor before starting any new cold exposure practice.
Yeah, especially if you have any health conditions.
Definitely. Safety first.
So let's talk about what really seems to set the Wim Hof method apart.
Okay.
This emphasis on the power of the mind.
He really believes that our thoughts and beliefs shape our physical experience.
And affect our ability to overcome challenges.
Yeah, he has this saying, the power of the mind over matter.
Powerful stuff.
And he suggests that with focused mental training,
we can learn to control our physiological responses.
Things like our response to cold, pain, stress. That's pretty radical, isn't it?
But how much control do we actually have over things like that? Aren't a lot of those functions automatic?
That's the big question. He uses the term interoception to describe this ability to sense and control our internal states. And it's interesting because there's a growing body of research on the mind-body connection.
Really?
Showing that we might have more conscious control over what we used to think were purely automatic functions.
Like heart rate, breathing.
Even immune response.
So he might actually be onto something.
He could be. He's definitely challenging the traditional view.
That those functions are totally outside of our control.
Right. And his message is very empowering, isn't it?
Yeah. Like we have way more influence over our bodies and health than we've been led to believe.
I think that's why it's resonating with so many people.
People who are looking for alternative approaches to health and wellness.
People who want to be more active in their own healing journey.
The Wim Hof method is kind of a blend of ancient wisdom.
And modern science.
Yeah.
It's offering a new path.
For those who are ready to explore.
Exactly.
So it's more than just breathing in ice baths.
It's about a new way of thinking.
About the mind-body connection and our potential for self-healing.
Right.
But what about Wim Hof himself? His personal life seems so connected to his teachings.
It does, doesn't it?
What can we learn from how he lives?
Well, the interview gives us some interesting insights into his daily routine. He's a big believer in early rising.
Okay.
He usually wakes up before dawn, like around 5 a.m. And he often starts his day with a cold shower or a plunge in an ice bath.
He doesn't waste any time.
He's committed. He also emphasizes regular exercise.
But not just a casual walk around the block.
No, his workouts are intense.
Pushing his body to the limit.
To the point of pain, yeah.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Pushing past limits, embracing discomfort. It's central to his whole philosophy.
And his approach to nutrition, too, right?
Right. He practices intermittent fasting.
Only eating one meal a day.
Usually quite late in the evening.
So he really walks the walk.
He embodies the principles he teaches.
But it's important to remember,
this is not a blueprint for everyone.
What works for him might not work for others.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you.
Listening to your body.
Respecting your limits.
And gradually pushing those limits in a safe and sustainable way.
Exactly.
Throughout this deep dive, we've come across some pretty compelling evidence.
Yeah.
But also areas where we need more research.
To really understand the Wim Hof method.
And its full potential.
Right. And I think it's important to acknowledge the skepticism.
Yeah.
Because it's natural for people to be skeptical, especially when a method challenges conventional wisdom.
And makes such bold claims, yeah.
Some critics say there's not enough scientific evidence to support his claims.
And they worry about the potential risks.
Of things like extreme cold exposure.
And the breathing technique.
Which can cause hyperventilation if it's not done correctly.
Right, that's a valid concern.
Others worry that the method might be overhyped. That some of the reported benefits could be due to the placebo effect.
Or other factors that haven't been fully considered in the research.
Yeah, it's definitely important to keep those criticisms in mind.
And approach the Wim Hof method with a balanced perspective.
Don't just blindly accept everything he says.
Right, do your own research.
Be critical.
But even with those cautions in mind, the Wim Hof method is a fascinating area of exploration.
It really is.
This unique approach to harnessing the power of the mind and body.
It has so much potential.
For improving our health and well-being.
It's a journey of self-discovery.
That requires commitment, discipline, and an open mind.
Yeah, it really makes you think, like, what are we truly capable of if we can tap into that.
Right. It's been quite the exploration.
Yeah, this deep dive has been fascinating.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we've looked at the 3 pillars of the Wim Hof method: the breathing, the cold exposure, and the mental training.
And we've examined the research, both the promising findings and the areas where more study is needed.
And I think we've really emphasized the importance of approaching this method safely.
And with a balanced perspective.
Listening to your own body.
It's about finding what works for you.
Not blindly following anyone else's path.
Exactly.
And we also touched on Wim Hof's, rather unique lifestyle.
Yeah, his daily routine.
He definitely walks the walk.
He lives what he teaches.
But there's one thing we haven't really explored.
What's that?
And it might be the most intriguing part of all.
Okay, I'm curious. We talked about the physical and mental benefits, the increased energy,
mood,
resilience, all of that.
Yeah.
But what about something deeper? What if this method is about more than just feeling good?
What do you mean?
Well, Wim Hof, he often talks about this idea of connecting to like a universal life force, a sense of oneness with nature, with all living things. He talks about experiencing this like profound peace and unity through his practice.
Interesting.
Almost like a transcending of the ego, merging with something greater.
It sounds almost spiritual.
It does, right.
And it's not a new idea, is it? This concept of interconnectedness.
Right, like we're not just separate individuals.
Well, part of something bigger.
Yeah, a larger whole.
Yeah.
So you're wondering if the Wim Hof method, with its focus on the breath,
The cold.
the mind,
could be a way to access that interconnectedness.
Exactly. What if it's a way to reconnect to our true nature?
To tap into that inner wisdom.
Yeah, that source of healing within us.
It's a profound question.
It is.
And one that we each have to explore for ourselves.
It really adds another dimension to this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not just about physical health or mental toughness.
It's about something much deeper.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about this deep dive.
You've done a great job presenting all the information.
We've explored the science, the practice, the philosophy.
It's a solid foundation.
But now the exploration is up to each individual.
To take what they've learned and see where it leads them.
Exactly. Whether they decide to try the Wim Hof method themselves,
or just take away some of the key principles.
We hope this deep dive has sparked their curiosity.
And given them some new perspectives.
It's really all about that journey of self-discovery.
It's ongoing.
It never ends.
So stay open, stay curious, and keep exploring.
Keep exploring that incredible potential within you.